How's it going, everybody? Frankie Cavone here, and you are watching episode 62 of the Kinda Live, Kinda Livin podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. This is a refreshment of what we've been doing for the past 4 years. We started podcasting in 2019, so this is going to be a new take on the series. It's going to be me with a guest, and today we got the one and only Greg Bell. How you doing, Greg?
Good to see you, man. How are you doing?
Doing good, and we're in the neck of it. It's the summer season. Music's happening left and right, and we're actually kind of getting towards the tail end, closing festival season down. We got Eastbound Throwdown coming up, ADK Music Fest. You're just coming off Bellstock, and you got some shows lined up. How's your summer been?
Well, my summer's been pretty mellow. I mean, I really don't do a lot during the summer because of the festivals and radius clauses and family things going on. So, basically I did Bellstock. I had Neon Avenue the other day. We have a Dark Star at Frog Alley next Thursday on the 22nd. And then after that is the Eastbound Throwdown. So,
of course,
that's the big one.
And Eastbound Throwdown started as just a small festival at a, what was it, a VFW?
Yeah, there was at I think it was at the Elks Club softball field or something.
Okay.
And, it was like a one-day thing, or they just wanted to try something. And after that one went over, we didn't really lose money. We didn't really make any money. But then they said, well, hey, Greg, we want to do like a full festival. And I go, well, you barely got people out for this thing. What do you want to do, like a 2-day festival? And I was sort of not sure it was going to work, but, because they're my buddies and my friends, I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And first one went really well, and now I think this is our 9th one, and next year will be Eastbound Throwdown 10.
That's crazy. And now, before that festival happened, were you already helping the band out with booking shows?
Yeah, I was like managing them at the time. We were booking a lot of stuff around the area, some out-of-town stuff. At one point, they're doing some big stuff. They got on Modown, they were on Snowdown. They played some shows at the Cap. They opened up for the Midnight Ramble Band one night. Did an after-show party for Willie Nelson. Did an after-show party for Phil. A couple shows on their own. Then, it just started getting hectic, and, they all had lives and jobs and girlfriends and wives and kids. So they started cutting back a little bit on the shows, and they wanted to pretty much stay local. And now, they play a few times a year, and with the Throwdown being the big event of the year for them.
Absolutely. And I first remember seeing their name tossed around. It was Mo, 2013 New Year's, going into 2014, and you guys, I think you had them booked the first night.
Yeah, they were open up the first night, yeah.
And at that point, I mean, they're like local rock stars. They're like the biggest band that never blew up. And it just goes to show like who they are as people. They're family guys, and oh man, I would love to see them, on the the top of
the national stage.
Yeah, the national stage.
Well, I mean, I think they definitely could have done that, but like you said, they're small town guys who they went away to college, came home, settled down. They have no giant egos or anything. They just they practice once a week. They have a good time hanging out together, and they play when they feel like it. And luckily for them, they're a band that can actually pull that off and still come back after not playing for 4 or 5 months and still sell out everywhere they go. So
absolutely, and even like a free show like Ryan's Wake that they had earlier in May. Just I don't know, it's just so special hearing everybody sing along to the songs like 90%, especially at Throwdown. It's like you would have to think like, how have I never heard of these guys before?
No, I mean, the thing is, when I first met them, this girl that used to do flyering for me kept telling me, oh, I got to see your friends Eastbound Jesus. I'm like, I don't know. People were always telling me about bands I should see, and usually it does not work out. And then I have to be sort of like an asshole saying, well, no, I really can't do anything with you. So I finally went to see him at Red Square one night, and there was probably like 75 people there. They'd been around for maybe a year or so, and they started playing, and 75 people knew every word to every song, and they were dancing. People were howling and screaming and laughing and smiling, and I think, okay, these guys can do something,
Absolutely, and with that being said, September 6th, September 7th is Eastbound Throwdown 2024. Like you said, the 9th edition of the festival, topping the bill with Eastbound Jesus and the return of the Mallet Brothers band,
yep.
Who. If you weren't there, Annie and the Waters saved the day. I believe one of the Mallets had a kid, right?
Yeah, they had a baby that day, so they sort of couldn't talk him into leaving. Yeah. I said, well, she's in the hospital. She's not going anywhere. You should still play. But they didn't go along with that. But I know their fiddle player did show up and sit down with a bunch of people that day. So they were sort of represented. So they played almost every throwdown. The only person who's played every throwdown that's going to be there besides Eastbound Jesus is Dan Johnson. Dan Johnson, if you don't know, he's a singer-songwriter who was based in Albany originally, who lives now outside of Burlington, I think. And he was the guy who started getting the Americana scene in Albany going. He used to do an Americana show at Valentine's, I think on Tuesday nights. And he's bringing all this amazing talent in that no one had ever heard of. And there were a lot of people going there, but if it wasn't for Dan Johnson, the Americana scene probably never would have happened or taken off in Albany. So he's given a spot of honor every year to open up the festival.
That's awesome. I always look forward to those Saturdays when he is playing, and seeing Adam Brockway of Eastbound Jesus sit in with him. I didn't realize how impactful he was to Adam, and what a nice guy Dan is.
He's one of the nicest guys, and he's an amazing singer-songwriter. He has a voice that's a little different than other people, but so does Dylan, so does Neil Young, so does Jerry. I mean, he has one of those voices that his songs were meant for his voice, and he writes great tunes, and he's probably one of the nicest people on this planet.
Absolutely. And we're just going to take a quick second here just to remind everybody, if you do have any questions for Greg Bell, please enter them into the chat, Facebook and YouTube. I'll be monitoring it throughout this whole episode. Also, please subscribe to the Mirth Films YouTube channel, because we will be doing this each and every single week, and there is live shows that you can watch back, like from Eastbound Throwdown 2023. So definitely just keep that in mind. And also, if there are any technical issues through this episode, we are working through the kinks as we do this first initial episode now that we're back here in Albany. And
yes, and we're hoping that Frankie is more on top of things than Elon Musk and Donald Trump, because we will not have things fucking up like they did. So
that's right. And I'm uninformed. What exactly happened?
I guess there was supposed to be a big interview on what's it, X now, whatever Elon Musk owns.
Twitter,
there.
X, yeah.
And I guess they had all sorts of technical difficulties, and they could only get audio, and it started an hour late, and there was just all sorts of issues with it. So I know we're not going to have that problem with Frankie, because Frankie's a professional.
I try to be. Now, just going to go through this chat here. Okay, so first off, we have a few things that we're going to talk about, and one of them is, and maybe this is a first for me, especially because I've only been involved with the music scene here in Albany since maybe 2017. That's when I started shooting. That might have been the first times I've ever gotten a photo pass from you. Now, like, if the scene ebbs and flows, and it seems, and I could be, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like the jam band scene is kind of changing, and maybe I'm crazy, but it's almost like there's like a huge gap in between who are the big bands, quote unquote, and then the smaller bands, and those middle bands, those dogs in the piles, those what was Pigeons playing ping pong. There's like this huge gap, and it just seems to me like there needs to be a void filled. Am I crazy, Greg?
You're probably crazy, Frankie, but I mean, I think the whole music scene, the whole live music scene is just struggling right now. I mean, you're seeing major tours canceling, like stadium tours canceling. You're seeing festivals canceling right and left. It just doesn't seem like the live music scene, the original live music scene is taking off as well as it used to. I mean, you see people, right now it seems like people want to go see tribute bands, people want to go see Taylor Swift nights, everything's like a shtick thing, I mean, no one seems to want to just play their own music. Not no one, but I mean, there's less and less original bands coming out there. I mean, dead cover bands are a dime a dozen now. I mean, Albany alone probably has 10 dead cover bands going at any given moment. And, I love the Dead, and I love the Dead cover bands, but, as I always tell people, if the Grateful Dead had only listened to one style of music, there would have been no Grateful Dead. So I think, part of the problem is the Dead music is so popular. And, it's not easy to play. A lot of these bands are amazing musicians and amazing singers. But, it's an easy way to make money. I mean, you can always get people to come out and see Grateful Dead. And I think, part of the problem is it used to be that bands would start out doing, like, Dead tunes or start out doing Fish tunes and develop their own style. and I don't see that happening as much as it once did. I also see, some of the older jam bands are not picking up the younger crowd. So, their audiences are dwindling a little bit just due to the fact of, the people are getting older, people have kids in college, they don't have the money, they can't go out to 15 shows in a row. I mean, it's, the world's changing. COVID had a big influence on things where, you probably lost 2 years of people who hit the age of that people would go out to see festivals and concerts, who got used to staying home and going to house parties and not going out. So, I mean, everything affects everything. But I don't think it's over. I mean, I still see young bands coming up who are really good. I mean, Albany has, they have a good number of bands who are still plugging away and starting to make some, get some notice for their talent and skill. I see some younger bands starting to come up again. So, I mean, I've been doing this for 32 years. It's been, it's been a roller coaster the whole time. 1 minute it looks like we're in a renaissance around here, the next minute nothing's happening. But I think right now we're on the upswing, and I think things are going to start picking up this fall.
That's great, and yeah, I mean, you're right. There are some young bands who are carrying the flag here. Your E Blocks, your Hilltops. Not only are they bands that maybe classify as jam, but they've become more seasoned over the past year or two, and especially with E Block, seeing them kind of go through some lineup changes and then really solidify their sound, solidify their lineup of people. I mean, and I don't know, I that singer is just, man, mix of John Mayer and Harry Styles.
Yeah, and you got Annie and the Water is really starting to take off. They're considered pretty much local. You got Glass Pony. My new favorite band is the Kai McClinton Band, who I see that band is going to take off at some point. I mean, none of them are jam bands per se. I mean, they do jam. They have some jam history behind them. But, like Kai McClinton is sort of a neo-soul thing that jams, and they can go almost any direction. Same with E-Block. They're sort of funky and jammy, but soulful at the same time. And, the thing is now, when jam bands, the name jam bands got going, they were pretty much jam bands. And now, bluegrass is jam band, and blues are jam bands, and country is, everybody's a jam band now. If they extend their tunes and improvise at all, they're now jam bands, which is good for the scene. But they're not. No one's pigeonholed anymore.
Definitely, I think, yeah, and maybe there's fatigue on the fan side of things. Like, okay, I've heard this done in a certain way 10 times by 10 different bands, and just bringing that up, I know we've talked before off camera, but music festivals, contributing to, well, I guess taking away from those local shows, those bigger festivals, and you've seen them dwindle over the past year. I mean, it went from being stacked last year with festivals to now there's a handful, and then even on the bigger side, Peach Fest, non-existent, and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I think what happens is the market got glutted. I mean, it used to be festivals where you really wanted to go to this festival because you were not going to see this group of bands playing together somewhere else, and now you can see them anywhere. So why drive 500 miles to someone and they're going to be in your neck of the woods a month later for 100 miles away or an hour away? So I think there's just been the festivals. They help some bands. I think they hurt other bands. I mean, if you're on a big festival and you're a lower level band, unless you have a huge set where you stand out so much that people can't ignore you, no one remembers the smaller bands on these festivals. And festivals, because of the nature of the business, there are radius clauses, they can't play within so many miles of the festival or within so many months of the festival. So it's sort of around here, there's so many jam band or those kind of festivals around that, I have 3 or 4 months where I can't book the bands that I normally book because they're playing festivals nearby. And I think to build your audience, I think you need to be touring and hitting the same venue, same areas more than once a year. And I don't see that happening anymore. I mean, when Mo took off and the Biscuits took off and all those bands started out in the early to mid 90s, they were hitting markets 3 or 4 times a year until they got the market down. And then he moved out an hour or two where people would still travel to see him an hour away. And it was a ripple effect where it just kept going a little further out, a little further out. and until they got to the point where they could hit a market once a year and still do well. I don't see that happening as much. It's hard to build a band that only comes to town once every 12 months, because even if you really like them, if they're only coming once, you may not be able to see them that night because you have something else going on, or maybe something else you want to go see. It's just hard to keep the momentum going for some of these bands.
Makes sense. And now, like, with that being said, and maybe not being able to, like you said, because of radius clauses booking certain bands, what are, when you first started Guthrie Bell Productions with Jeff Guthrie over 30 years ago now, what are the challenges you're facing today versus then?
I mean, then, I was new and I was stupid and I was just booking anything that came to me. So I wasn't really worried about it. The shows were much cheaper to put on. Back then, if I had a show that tanked, I might lose, $200 or $300. Now a show tanks, I lose thousands of dollars. So that's the biggest challenge. Is I don't see as many touring bands come through. I mean, back then there was also only a small number of people who were doing that kind of stuff, whereas now the competition is a lot bigger. In this area alone, you have Jared Hartstone doing stuff, you have Shane Spillinger doing stuff, you have Jen and Justin doing stuff. There's many more people who are doing similar bands than I do, so there's more competition. There's not as many venues. When I started doing shows, Jeff and I were booking, before we were actually promoting, we were more like booking agents at the time. And sometimes we were doing 8-10 shows in a weekend. We'd have shows in Schenectady, Troy, Saratoga. We might have 5 shows in Albany, but there was places to play and there were people to go out. But, the same as now. Some shows did well, some shows didn't do well. I mean, I think the first show I remember making money at Valentine's, I made $8. And somebody says, "Oh, that sucks." I'm like, "No, that's the first time I ever made fucking $8. This is great, But, I mean, it's just, at some point, you only have so much money to lose,
That's right. And now we got, now question with that is, I guess just like the process of, I don't know, just like what you're going through, like on the band side of things, like what do you think, what best advice can you give an upcoming band like a Clyde McLean? Like what is it like to stay motivated, to stay healthy and focused?
I mean, the hardest thing for especially for local bands is that they start getting a name and everybody wants them, and they start playing, 3 or 4 times a month in the same market. And you have to start out like that. You got to take gigs when you get them, and I understand that. But at some point, you got to start cutting back on the local gigs and get out of town. And it's hard getting out of town because same as when you started in Albany or Troy or wherever. The first few shows, you have a few friends there. You go out of town, you may not even have those friends. You may be playing to nobody. You're not making any money. You're sleeping in a van. You're eating pizza if you're lucky. And a lot of people just can't do it. They have jobs. They got to eat. They got to pay their bills. So, I mean, if you want this to be your life, you have to make it your life. You have to say, okay, fuck it. We're just going to go for it. And get out of town as many times as you can. Try to, hook up with out-of-town bands, do gig trades, check out the market, see, what places are hiring new bands, and, plug away and just beat it to death. Like I've told this story many times. My first show with Mo had 3 people at it, and look how big they've become. Disco Biscuits, I had them for 3 or 4 years before anybody would come to see them. I mean, it's a struggle, but those bands, that's what their goal in life was to be. It was to be in a band. And they worked and worked and worked until they got there.
Yeah, and that's it. It's the struggle, going through the struggle, and trying to make something, making something out of it. Like I'm still, I would consider my initial part of doing Mirth Films, and a lot of it is establishing what you're doing, but not only just keeping yourself, like, I guess, just like keeping the train going, but also like trying to keep the train going and then also innovate and do something different for the next day. It's not always the easiest, and getting in ruts and getting yourself out of ruts. And it's struggles of a small business, as I'm sure you know. Like, and I look at that as the same thing as a band. And like, it's kind of cool to see like Hilltop maybe not playing so many Albany shows, and now like then coming back and seeing them play live at 5 and getting the approval from the crowd,
Yeah.
and then like hustling and playing Ophelia's the same night. Like, I think everybody could take a page from that book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard life if you want to be a touring band, and I think they need to start out by building their own market so they can bring people in from other markets to play with them, and then get gig trade so that you're playing someplace where you get at least in front of the other band's audience. And say you're a new band and you're starting to do really well in this market, try to get out of town once or twice a month, and then try to get out of town like 3 times a month. Then try to get out of town like a weekend a month or a couple weekends a month. And then when you get to a sort of point where you have 5 or 6 markets, do a little mini tour of a week. Take a week off from work. But because most of these people have day jobs, they can't just go and play whenever they want. They have places, they live places, they have families, they got to support themselves. So it's not easy, but if you really believe in yourselves, then it can be done. And you just have to just chip away at it, realizing that the bands you see who are selling out 20,000 seat rooms were doing the same thing 15, 20 years ago. None of these bands took off from nobody to 20,000 people. It took years and years to get to that. And I don't think a lot of bands realize that. They're saying, well, why aren't we doing better? Because no one was doing better. Everybody struggles in the beginning. Unless unless something happens along the way that puts you above where everybody else is, like Goose. Goose took off like crazy over COVID.
Yeah.
Because they were playing every drive-in show. They were playing every place they could play. They were doing live streams. I was doing Goose in Albany for 3 or 4 years, and they were not getting people out at all. 30 people maybe, 40 people. The last time I did them in Albany was them and Eggy. It sold out Red Square in like about 2-3 hours.
That's right.
Then COVID hit, and they just took off from there. And I always knew they had the potential to do that, and they just figured out a way to do it.
Definitely. And yeah, I remember that. It was that fall 2019. Sold, yeah, like you said, sold out in a couple hours. They played that Peach Music Festival set. And but yeah, they're utilizing tools that are available to them, and they're taking risks and chances.
Yeah, and I think they had a good team behind them, and I think there may have been some money behind them. But they worked their asses off to get where they are, and they deserve to be there. They're an amazing band, and they're one of those bands who I always knew could go somewhere if they just stuck it out.
Definitely.
Same with like the Dogs. Same with some of these other bands, Annie and the Water. They all, Eggy's taking off now. The Special's taking off. I mean, a lot of these bands have played Albany, to very few people, and they've built up over the years, and that's how you do it.
Makes sense. And it's something that I thought about, and I a Facebook post reminded me of this, was staying after your set if you're an opening band and making those connections. How important is that?
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of bands, they play, they take off, and I mean, sometimes they have to because they got a long ride for the next night or something like that. But, like at Bellstock this year, one of the best things about Bellstock is a lot of the bands stay and watch the whole show. They watch everybody, and they sit in, they hang out, they party with people, and they become part of the community,
Absolutely.
And that's the way to do it.
I am no scientist when it comes to this, but I found that when you put yourself in situations that make you feel uncomfortable, it makes you just feel a little more confident the next day. So if it is staying late, going to a city that you've never been, maybe you're on your own, but if you do it, it's better than just staying at home.
You just,
or
you can't
sit on
get
Facebook or something.
I mean,
like that.
it's discouraging to go someplace and play to nobody.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I could do that. I wouldn't want to do that. But I also put shows on like that where I have an amazing band and no one comes. I mean, you just got to say, okay, that one's done. Let's move on. You got to get over it. You can't take it personally. You just got to believe in yourself and just keep moving.
That's right. Just keep moving. And we're just going to keep moving along here. I'm going to go check out the chat here. Danielle Roberts. Sorry, Danny. We got Love Me a Taylor Swift night. Taylor Swift, everybody.
Hey, I love Taylor Swift. I do not really listen to her much, but I mean, I respect what she does. She's good to her fans. She's good to her people that work for her. She stands up for herself. And I have no problem with people doing Taylor Swift nights.
Yeah.
But you're seeing a lot of bands who have their own stuff that rather than do their own stuff are doing Taylor Swift nights. And that's what bothers me. It's one thing if you're doing your own stuff all the time, you say, oh, this one night I'm going to do this. But you start seeing them doing it more and more often, getting away from what they really want to be doing. And that's upsetting to me because I think you should believe in yourself. You should have the balls to trust yourself and trust your music and go forward, you know?
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, it is easier to go and cover a song versus sitting down and writing and producing and you know, I don't know nothing about that, but like I could agree with you. It does seem like there's been an influx of cover acts becoming more and more relevant today versus a few days ago. You know, like, but what do you think of the comparison when people say Taylor Swift fans are kind of like deadheads? Like with the friendship bracelets? Like,
it seems like they are, man. People are flying to fucking Europe to go see Taylor Swift because they can't get tickets in the United States. I mean, they would go to every show if they could get tickets. I mean, you know, it's a different style of music, but, you know, people are people, you know, and, you know, I think the one thing I like about her is she doesn't like Live Nation or Ticketmaster. And if she can shut them down, I'll buy every fucking album she's ever put out, you know?
yeah.
But I have a lot of respect for Taylor Swift.
Now we got some questions here, and first is from Dave from Dr. Jaw. And I'm going to ask this question. You don't have to answer it seriously if you don't want to. What's your favorite drug to do at a concert?
My favorite drug to do at a concert?
Yeah.
Budweiser.
I knew you were going to say that. But
I have family members watching this. You know?
That's right. This is PG-13, everybody. Next, we got a Billy Fields tuning in. What about older artists that are coming out? Also, what about new artists that are doing their own merch, CDs? Unfortunately, 21 and heavy DWI pressure has been awful towards the bands. I mean, do you notice that as an issue for you? Like, as far as like people wanting to come out, or because to me, the answer is simple: Uber. Take an Uber. I went to a 40th birthday party not too long ago, and you know, like, it maybe costs a couple more dollars, but it's better than spending $20,000 and risking somebody else's life.
I mean, you know, DWIs have been an issue for many years, and, you know, you should not drink and drive. I mean, I've done it. I've been arrested for it. I don't do it anymore, you know. I spend more on Ubers than I spend on food, probably. But I want to go to the shows. I want to be at the shows, but not everybody can afford to do it. I mean, if your excuse for not going to the show is that you can't go to the show because you don't want to drink and drive, don't drink.
Don't drink.
I mean, find it and take turns. Have one of your friends drive this night and you drive the next night. I mean, that's not really an excuse for not going to a show.
Definitely. And I'll have to say, like, Danny and I, we did a dry January, and it was cool. At your Martin Luther King party, there was a lot of other people also doing the dry January thing. I can't believe how many non-alcoholic beers I've seen, especially at your house. I mean, I haven't been.
I can't believe that either.
It's crazy. And but like, it's one of those things. You know? It's just like one of those things where it's like, if you do it enough, you go to enough shows when you're not drunk or you're not drinking in general, then you get used to it. Of course, the first time is going to be awkward.
I mean, you know, it's different. You know, I mean, people get nervous around new people, but I mean, the way you got to look at it is like when you're at work all day and you make friends at work, you made those friends while you were sober, and when you're in other situations, you're not drinking, you make friends in those situations. So, you know, you just get past you know, being uncomfortable. But I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it's not hard to do. I mean, I rarely don't drink at a show.
Yeah.
But I'm not driving either, so.
That's right. Now, we got another question from Jason Townley. What's Greg's favorite local spot for a Reuben and Bud?
My favorite spot for a Reuben? I don't really have a favorite spot. I like a good Reuben wherever I get them. I mean, so.
Wherever you get them, yeah.
And my favorite spot for a Bud is a place that serves Bud.
That's right. Now, there's a lot of great bars in town. Like, if you're not going to a show, this is something I even want to know. Like, I'm not really a bar guy. I do go out to bars, but it's, you know, I'd prefer to go to a bar with a show going on. But, like, what's a good, like, local, hey, I'm going to stop in for happy hour here in Albany, New York?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, back in the day before I was in this business, I go to happy hours all the time. Now I rarely go out for happy hours, or I rarely go out just to hang out at a bar because I'm out so much working, you know.
Of course.
So I mean, I'll go to the fountain, have a couple beers once in a while. I might go down to, Ophelia's for a beer, Hollow for a beer, McGeary's. I mean, but I don't know as many people who are out in the afternoons and early evenings that I once did because I don't do it that much anymore. So
makes sense. Now another question here we got from Tallboy Can. In your opinion, what bands should have made it but didn't? That's a good question, Tallboy.
I mean, there's hundreds of them. I would say one that stands out is Moon Boot Lover. Moon Boot Lover, I thought, was on the way to fame and fortune, and different things came up that sort of slowed it down and ended it. Hamill on Trial is one of the most talented guys I know, and he struggles to get audiences. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Eastbound Jesus could be famous if they wanted to be. Some people, different things happen. I mean, my taste in music might be different than everybody else's taste. So, what I think should have been doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. And it's hard to say, and to live that life versus see that life, it's completely different. One band that I always thought, and I've only seen them once live, but I'm excited to see them at 80K Fest, is Rack. And here in Chris Machete play guitar, Todd Stoops. I don't know the rest of the guys in the band. I know their newer lineup, but just hearing the talent, it's like, what the hell? There's always those bands that make you scratch your. How did they not make it?
I mean, Rack was one of those bands. I think I was like one of the first people to book them outside of Burlington.
Really? Okay, so they are a Burlington-based band.
Yeah, they started out I'm pretty sure they started. I mean, their agent was in Burlington anyway.
Okay.
And I remember getting them, and I remember people saying, "Oh, they sound like Fish," And I remember doing an interview with somebody, and they're saying, "Oh, this band sounds like Fish." I said, They all sound like Fish. They sort of sound like the Dead." Or now, at that point, they started sounding like Disco Biscuits. That was like the new genre. It was Jamtronica. So they all start out sounding like somebody because you got to come from somewhere, and then they develop into their own thing. The Rack was a great band. I mean, there's tons and tons of great bands that aren't around anymore for many different reasons. I couldn't even start a list.
Definitely. Now another question for you: how important? This is a question for me. How important is the pre-sale ticket and buying that ahead of time for the promoter and for the band?
Well, I mean, for the promoter, it's good because he knows he has some money coming in and that he's not going to play to nobody because, you have weather could affect it or something that gets announced at the last minute affects it. But, I mean, throughout my career, pre-sales were not a major concern of mine. I mean, it's almost always been the door. Unfortunately, since COVID, pre-sales have become more important because there's not as many people coming out at the last minute as you would think. It depends on the show. Up at Saratoga, you get more walk-ups than you would in Albany. I mean, Troy, I'm not sure how things are. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in Troy. I don't know if they're getting people just coming to shows. There are people who don't buy pre-sale tickets for anything. And there are people who always buy a pre-sale ticket. I can look at my pre-sale list, and it's like the same people bought pre-sales. Unless it's a show that's going to sell out or definitely sell out, there's no reason to buy a pre-sale ticket because after ticket fees, you're not really saving that much to buy it in advance, which is a major problem. So, I mean, if you can buy, say you have a $15 pre-sale, $20 door, and your $15 pre-sale is a $250 ticket fee, you're only saving a couple bucks to wait till the door, and say it snows or it rains or you have hail or the power goes out or something. You wait until I see everybody wait until the last minute to get their tickets.
Makes sense.
And it's happening. The festivals are like that. I mean, that's why so many festivals are going under is because they depend on pre-sales because there's so much money involved that if that doesn't hit a certain number, they throw in the towel. I should cancel some shows because of pre-sales, but I never do because I always assume that people are going to come.
Definitely.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
now there is a new trend, and I've talked to other people about this. But what is your opinion on festivals that are planning? They make the announcement, they got the band lineup, everything, but then they cancel. Like, what is your opinion? Like, to me, honestly, from an outsider's perspective, who knows jack shit about booking bands, don't announce in the first place unless you have the funds. But how hard is that to say, and is that even a statement
Well, I
that
mean,
you
part
can
of
even make?
the problem is you have a lot of people putting on festivals who wake up one day and say, "Oh, I'm gonna have a festival. I'm gonna make all this money." They don't realize what goes into having a festival, and we've seen it happen with certain festivals around this area. Where people overextended themselves and the festivals bombed. And they lost thousands and thousands of dollars. Most people don't have that kind of money to lose, and most people don't. Most people are so confident in themselves, even with no experience, that they don't ever think that they're going to lose money. And I'm not saying that. I mean, I don't want to put down people who cancel festivals because they're going to lose money. I mean, I personally don't cancel stuff because I don't think it's fair to the bands or the people who bought the tickets. But usually, it hurts me in the long run. But that's just my feeling. I mean, I can't speak for somebody else. I mean, I think if you're going to put on a festival and you don't have the money to back it, you should not put on the festival.
Let your money speak for itself and put that stuff up front. Obviously, it's not as easy. It's not as easy as that because, I mean, just from doing Wild in the Trees just a couple of years, I realized that's not for me because like spending a whole year of your life worrying about the dollar and how am I going to pay these bands? Am I getting enough sponsorship? Am I, I feel like if you don't, I feel like it could affect your public reputation if you cancel, and earn distrust.
It does. I mean, there are people now who are not, who tried and failed or not going to ever do a festival again because the bands don't trust them or the agents don't trust them. I mean, people know that if I book the show, it's going to happen. And, sometimes it annoys me that certain agents or managers are not more willing to work with you in situations like that. Some people are better about that. Some people will say, well, hey, let's cut the guarantee down so that you don't get hurt as bad. Some bands will do that. Some agents will do that. But a lot of bands now, they have corporate management. It's not their friends managing them anymore. People who are in the scene. It's people who are in a corporation whose business is to make money. And it's, from my point of view, the stuff that I do was once more community based than it is now. And I see there's a lot more people in it just for the money. And I mean, that's always been my thing is I was never in it just for the money. I mean, there's times this week I've kicked myself several times because I see things being announced saying, boy, how did they get that? And finding out that sometimes I just pay too much money for shit that I should just be lowballing people. But I try to pay people what I think they're worth. I don't try to insult people and say, well, you're not worth that much to me.
Absolutely, and let's face
it. That's why I'm broke all the time.
Now, let's just face it. There isn't a lot of money in this, and from a photographer's perspective, you gotta cut your losses sometimes and realize why you're doing this. And sometimes, especially for me, this is because I like being a part of the community, and that to me is priceless. And bringing community into this conversation here with Greg, how great does it feel when you do you ever just sit back and realize this person came to my show 20 years ago, this person came to my show 5 years ago, this person's new and they're starting to cycle in a lot more. That must make you feel good at the end of the day.
I mean, what makes me feel good is looking out at the audience. I mean, if you see me at shows a lot of times, you'll see me off to the side of the stage, not even looking at the band, just looking at the audience, and that's what's important to me. I mean, of course, the music and the bands are important, but to me, it's the audience. I mean, how the audience is reacting, is the audience having a good time? Seeing people singing and dancing and smiling. That's what it's all about to me. I mean, that's why I do it. I mean, I like being popular. I like people liking me, So.
Of course, you're the most popular guy here, man.
Well, in this room, maybe, but.
And but I mean, I think that's what attracts me to what you do is not only the music. I've always looked at jam band music, and I'm not even mean to classify you in the jam sector, even though that is your bread and butter. But to me, I'm wearing a Metallica shirt right now, Master of Puppets.
I like Metallica. Yeah.
It's a 7-minute solo, super fast, super intricate. But then the way I would explain it to my non-jam friends 10 years ago is break that solo down and ingest it in a different way, and that's jam band music. It's all rock and roll.
No, I mean, when I started out, I was booking everything. I was doing hardcore, I was doing punk, I was doing metal, I was doing indie rock. I mean, the jam band thing sort of just fell in my lap because I just happened to be booking stuff at a time where there was tons of bands coming up, and I just got lucky, you know.
Definitely.
And I mean, I was always a deadhead, so I, the audience was closer to what the people I hung out with and the people I was friends with, so that's why I got named the jam band guy. But, I like all styles of music, and I book all styles of music when I get a chance. It's just some styles of music, I don't know the audience well enough to make it worthwhile,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to book something just because I think it's going to make money if I don't know how to book it or how to promote it, So there are other people who are better at certain things than I am, and I let them do it,
Absolutely. I mean, you got your Teddy Tolls, you got your now Keith Moraleses, but there's room for everybody for different genres for sure. To get back into Eastbound Throwdown, I just want to go over the lineup. It's different, and from my understanding, from what you've told me, the Eastbound boys have a lot of influence on this lineup here, just in general throughout the years, and so we're just going to go through it. We got Eastbound Throwdown 2024, September 6th and 7th at Irwin Family Farm in Salem, New York. A super special festival and that, to me, is I think more people should know about, especially in outside of the Capital Region area. But for the lineup this year, we have Eastbound Jesus, of course, Boy Golden, the Mallet Brothers Band, Driftwood, Damn Tall Buildings, Worm Dogs, Dirty Blanket, Moon Boot Lover, Space Trash, Dan Johnson, Turf and Turf, always, and Ida Mae Specker, and then, of course, Christian Montgomery and the Winter Kill Band.
And don't forget Scott, too. I was just added, and Moon Boot.
Scott Hannay, that's right. So this is a new addition. Scott
As of
Hannay,
today.
What is he? So he's going to be doing...
He's going to do his video game set.
Oh, Scott Hannay plays video games.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, that's awesome. Scott, now did you first get to know Scott Hannay during the Capital Zen phase? Was it before that?
I mean, I knew him a little bit, during that, but I met him mainly when he was with
Mr. F?
Mr. F.
Okay.
Because I had been Timbercrew's manager before that.
That's right. So that was, for those who don't know, that was pretty much Timbercrew plus Scott? Was that how
minus
it worked?
Andrew plus Scott.
Okay, minus Andrew plus Scott. Okay. And so that's cool. So there's going to be something different to offer for the late night. And usually there's not even a late night at the...
Well, I guess there is now. I just found out today about it. And Scott's an amazing talent. And I would have a feeling that he'll be sitting in with the band at some point also.
That's awesome. He did, I can't remember. He did play with...
He's played with him a couple times, yeah.
Okay, that's right. And he does add something different.
Yeah, he adds a lot to it. He adds a lot to everybody he plays with, so...
Now, do you choose when to howl at shows? Like, is it like, okay, do you only save it for certain bands? Or is it basically like how you say, you look out in the crowd, you know this is a party?
Well, it depends on how fucked up I am. I mean, I get to a certain point, I like to howl,
That's right. And just going back through here, something that I just want to pull out my notes here, make sure we're staying on track.
And I just want to say one thing here. I'm not sweating because I'm nervous. I'm sweating because it's hot as hell here in Frankie's studio. So.
That's right. It is hot as hell. We are in the neck of it. We did have a little bit of a cold front for the past week. I would say not to turn the AC on and just I don't know, be able to sleep under the covers. Like that's something
it's been great the past couple nights.
And who knew? Who knew the heat was coming back here? But just some other topics. Doing your part as a fan, and maybe we've kind of covered this already, but like, what little things can a fan do to not only support the shows, but support the bands?
I mean, posting videos and pictures, posting little reviews, telling their friends about it, bringing somebody new to the shows, buying their merch. I mean, a lot of bands live on their merch money, I mean, they're not living on the money they make at the show because that's what they're doing. They're touring and paying sound guys and tour managers and agents and management and stuff. So their money comes a lot of times just from the merch. And I mean, I know that it's a new thing now where a lot of places are not taking merch money, but I've never taken merch money from bands. My rule has always been, if the band's not an asshole, they can have their merch money. If they're assholes, then I take their merch money. And I think I've only taken money once, so.
Now, I honestly, I didn't even know that until that became like a publicized thing maybe like 8 months ago. But you can't, I feel like it's like stealing from the poor. I'm not saying bands are poor, but like when you're focusing all your time on one thing and you have to sacrifice not having a full-time job, part-time job, and you're just picking up gig work, like you got to make ends meet. Like
I mean, some places, get 30% of the merch money or 25% of the merch money.
That's nuts to me. Now,
I usually take a hat or a shirt. That's my take,
Absolutely, and everybody needs a hat and a shirt here. You had an announcement to make. What?
Are we getting towards the end here? I'm not making it until the end, so.
I guess. I guess we're not. We're not getting towards the end here. We can.
When we're at the end, I'll make my announcement.
A question I got for you is, and this is me now. This is me asking you this at 31 versus. I don't know. I met you at maybe like 26, 27 when we started doing the documentary. Met you at Mode 2018 reunion. Not reunion, but Rob coming back after kicking cancer's ass. When you started to have kids and, you have a family life, while Marilyn's very involved with what you do have a separate life at home. Like, was that hard for you to, separate time? Did you ever question and think to yourself, I got to focus less on this, or did you always have that support?
I always think that. you got to realize that for the first 18 years I did this, I was a full-time teacher. So I would teach all day. I was coaching my son's soccer team. I was going to my daughter's games. They were both had school concerts. I never really missed any of their activities. Even if I had to leave a show for a couple hours, I would go to their activities. I never put my family on the back burner for anything that I can think of. My friends more so than my family. I've missed a lot of parties and get-togethers because I have to work. And, unfortunately, over the years, you get invited to less things if you turn people down all the time. But, that's been my only regret is, missing out on certain things that I would have liked to have done. But, I also don't like to not be at my shows.
Of course. You're one of the only people that actually does stay at the show, sometimes for the duration or sometimes when your health is at risk and everyone orchestra is playing, but you stick it out, right?
Yeah, because there's something wrong with me.
That's funny.
But yeah, I at one point I remember when I got into the Hall of Fame up in the Eddies, and one of the things I said was I apologized to my wife and kids for not always being there, and my kids told me afterwards, "Why'd you say that?" They said, "You were always there." I'm thinking, okay, I just said it to sound good,
That's funny.
But yeah, my kids and my wife have been supportive the whole time. Marilyn, now that the kids are gone out of the house, Marilyn comes to most shows. She does all my artwork. I could not have done this with any other family, I don't think,
Makes sense. And I never understood the whole St. Marilyn thing during the documentary at all. It wasn't until getting to know her and going to Catskill Mountain Jubilee that in the documentary Vinny Amico, he's like, she parties harder than he does. And I remember trying to hang and being up at 3 a.m. watching Hilltops set at Blackthorn Resort after everything was said and done and being like, how the hell is she still going to have any of this energy?
She doesn't stop. She out parties me most nights, I'm in bed way earlier than her at Throwdown and Bellstock, She's an animal.
She's an animal. But hey, I don't know. You guys have always been great to me, and I don't know. I love you equally. Maybe a little more, but I love you equally. And
everyone loves Marilyn. She's like the queen of rock and roll in Albany.
She is, and she's so inviting, nice, and even we had our housewarming party this weekend, and just seeing her go up to people that she doesn't even know about, just to extend a conversation. That says a lot about her character.
She's a good person. I don't know what she's doing with me, but maybe that was her punishment for some past life, You're
a lucky guy, Greg. Now, just to get into just some plugs, we do have, Greg, actually, first plug, you have a show coming up with Neon Avenue at Lark Hall, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I got to put on my reading glasses here for my notes.
That's right.
Yes. Okay.
And it is hot as hell in here. We are
Well,
sweating
let me
bullets.
just go through the shows I have coming up in the next month here or so. And I do have a lot more shows we'll be announcing in the next couple of weeks. But we have Dark Star Orchestra at Frog Alley next Thursday, the 22nd. We have Sister Sparrow and the Dirty Birds with Kai McClinton Band at Lark Hall on, I think, September 19th. Start Making Sense at Putnam Place on the 21st. Live Dead and Brothers, which is a tribute to the Dead and Allman Brothers, featuring Tom Constantin, who played with the Dead, Mark Caron, who played with Rat Dog, Barry Oakley Jr., whose father was in the Allmans, and several other people who play either with people from the Dead or the Allman Brothers. Neon Avenue at the 28th at Lark Hall. Kitchen Dwellers with Sicard Hollow on 10/25 at Cahoe's Music Hall. Chris Jacobs, who's a hot up-and-coming country blues singer, at Cahoe's Music Hall on November 7th. And that show that we're going to be announcing this week, which everybody should be excited about, is the Deadbeats' 30th anniversary of playing Albany for the first time in 1994 when I brought them here in the fall of 1994. So that'll be a big one.
Wow. Okay. And where'd you where'd you just say that was going to be?
That's going to be at Lark Hall.
Lark Hall. Now, what was the original Deadbeats lineup? Was Denise in it? Was Mikey in it?
Alex and Denise were in it. I do not remember who else was in it at the time. I booked them at a Mexican restaurant down in Saugerties. There was a dentist from New Jersey who had a bunch of money, and he had rented out this Mexican restaurant, which was going to be right outside the entrance to Woodstock 94 in Saugerties. And his thing was he was going to do bands on Sundays leading up to Woodstock and bring all these people in and make all this money. And somehow he got my name, and I did all this research on bands from down around Poughkeepsie, Woodstock area, and booked some bands. And of course, it's a Sunday at a Mexican restaurant. No one knew anything about the fucking place. And the first couple of shows did not go well. And he canceled me. He canceled all the shows I booked and told me I was a nobody and that I shouldn't have any business doing this kind of thing. I screwed him over and all this. But the Deadbeats are one of those bands. And so after that, I booked them up at Valentine's. And as we all know, they played Valentine's every Wednesday after that for 25 years maybe before Valentine's closed. And then they went over to the Low Beat and did every Wednesday there. And now, they're playing all over the place. So November 1st, the Day of the Dead, or the Day of the Deadbeats at Lark Hall. We're going to do one set with the current band and former members, and they're going to do one set with just the current band. And it'll be a big celebration for 30 years of the Deadbeats in Albany.
That's awesome. Now, wow, 30 years. And that's almost as long as your career with Guthrie Bell.
A couple years less, but...
That's crazy, Greg. Now, something I like to do on the podcast, which this podcast almost didn't even happen because I got home today, and maybe it's because of the heat or whatever, but my computer, I thought, crashed, and so I've never taken apart a computer in my life, and somehow my friend calmed me down, and I took this computer apart, and we were able to do this because Greg Bell's here, and you can't say no. The show must go on. But something that I definitely... want to continue from the original podcast of Kind of Live, Kind of Livin' is like what you've been watching, listening, playing. I know you like to watch TV. What are some shows that you like to watch or are currently watching right now?
Well, I mean, it's like summer break from, these days, you never know when shows are coming on, when they're starting, when they're ending. I mean, so, we just finished watching The Boys, which is...
I've heard a lot about it. It's a superhero movie?
Yeah, it's pretty sick. I mean, it's probably one of the sickest shows on TV, but we like it. And, I like to watch Alone, which they put people out by themselves up in, now they're in Antarctica, or not, in the Arctic Circle, surviving for however many days. I like that. I'm a big Law and Order person, so...
SVU, Criminal Intent, all of them. Okay.
And, if there's nothing on, I'd go to Law and Order.
Okay.
I like the Chicago shows when they come out, Chicago PD, Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
I do not like Chicago Med, but...
What about Chicago the band?
Chicago the band, I liked them their first couple of years before they became too cheesy.
Okay.
So you got to understand that Chicago the band, when they came out, was like a really cool rock band with horns that was not being done by anybody, It wasn't until after like the mid '70s, late '70s, they became sort of a soft rock band, considered a soft rock band.
Okay.
Yeah, back in the early days, they're playing the Fillmore, they're playing festivals,
Wow, did not know that. Okay. Now, I guess I'll just contribute to this. Somebody I've been watching Bloodline. I don't know if you ever heard of that show.
I've heard of it, I've never watched it.
The main actor from Early Edition is in it. I can't tell you his name, and he's also like in like the 2005 King Kong with Jack Black. That's really the only show I've been watching. Before this, a year ago, I wouldn't watch TV at all. I just didn't have the time and didn't create time, or I guess sometimes I'm so into work that like I don't know how to relax. I don't know what my outlet is, and then it just takes meeting somebody to figure that shit out.
I mean, we watch a lot of old movies. I like old movies from the 30s and 40s, 50s. I like new movies too, but the old ones have something special because they remind me of being a kid watching a $1 Million Movie on Channel 11 from New York. Because they'd have the same movie like 7 times in a week, and I'd watch them
cool.
4 or 5 times.
Definitely. Now, speaking of old movies, got to give a shout out to Spectrum Theaters right here in Albany, New York. On Tuesday nights, they do old movies.
Yep.
I don't know how old, but I still think that's cool. And I also think it's cool that that Apex took over and is keeping the lights on, especially when, Madison Theater didn't have that, know?
I mean, there's a lot of things that are changing in Albany. It's sort of weird to watch. Places like Troy and Schenectady seem to be on the upswing, and Albany seems to be, we just lost College of St. Rose. You had a CVS close. You had a Stewart's close. I mean, downtown is sort of dead at night, unless there's something going on at the Palace or times Union Center. Hopefully, I've seen that go in waves too. So hopefully we're going to be on the upswing again down there too. But
absolutely. Now, as far as listening, like what new music have you been listening to, separate from the jam, or like what how do you consume your music in general? Like,
people are not gonna pretty much like it. I listen to music in my car, basically. Serious, I listen to Dead Hour, or Grateful Dead Station. I listen to Outlaw Country. I listen to Little Steven's Underground. I listen to some oldie stations. I listen to some jazz. I listen to some blues. I mean, I mix it up. I have 30 different things that I plug in, and whatever my mood is. I don't really listen to that much new stuff. I can't find the right station to listen to. I sometimes listen to EQX sometimes, but it's more, there's a lot more indie pop kind of stuff in there that it's not my thing really.
Of course.
Which I mean, I understand people liking it. It's just not what I prefer. But I don't really see a lot of new music besides stuff that I bring into Albany. I mean, when music's your job, it's sort of, when you're not working, it's sort of like you want to get away from work for a little while.
Absolutely.
So I listen to this stuff like, I'll listen to like a '60s station, bring back memories of junior high and high school and stuff. Or
now I'm happy you brought that up. Just with music being a job, do you ever just sit in silence? Because sometimes like I don't want to listen to music. Maybe I'll listen to talk radio. Maybe I'll just.
I mean, I read. I read a lot. I don't really do anything in silence. I mean, I always have. I mean, even when I'm reading, I might have something on TV, or I might have, I play albums. I still have a turntable and cassettes and CDs. I mean, thousands of them. So.
Of course. I guess just some stuff I've been listening to lately, not by choice, but I like it now. Taylor Swift. I guess I'm a Swiftie somewhat. I'm working on it. I don't know all the songs, but I could probably lip or fake lip a lot of it. Metallica. I'm wearing a Metallica shirt right now. They're one of my favorite bands of all time, but like they're one of those bands that just like you listen to a band so much you kill it for yourself, and then 10 years go by, and then you listen to it again, and you're like, kind of like you were saying, like 60s, like junior high, like it's nostalgic for me, and like I love Metallica, and sometimes you got to put it to rest to realize how great it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most stuff, anything that's newer I listen to is probably Americana based, like Tyler Childers and stuff like that. I mean,
Definitely.
So I mean that's more song and harmony and melody based stuff.
Let's see what else. Green Day. Charlie XCX, Brat. That's a new thing here. Heaven and Hell, Dio, Black Sabbath is something I didn't really indulge in, or nor did I appreciate Dio's contributions to hard rock. But man, that's such a good album, and yeah, man,
I was a big Black Sabbath fan in the first 2 or 3 albums, you know.
Of course.
I went to see him in 1971. It was a cool show.
Was that down in Long Island?
Yeah,
or was it up here?
Comac Arena in Long Island.
Comac Arena.
Yep. Sweat Hog was the opening band.
Now, speaking of Long Island in general, is it the water really that makes the bagels that much better?
I mean, that's what they say. The New York water is what makes the bagels and the pizza dough better. But, I mean, I would swear by it, but, you know, people up here don't believe it, you know.
Makes sense.
But I just remember my wife thought that me and my friends from Long Island were like sort of pizza snobs. So one time we were down in Manhattan, we were going to the Garden for, we were taking the kids to see the record company or something, you know, at the Garden. And,
the record company played the
no, it wasn't. Oh no, what was it? Black Keys.
Oh, Black Keys.
Black Keys.
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, we went to see Black Keys at the Garden, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to prove something to you." I said, "Just pick a street. We'll walk down the street. Pick any pizza place you go to, where you want. And we'll go in there, and you tell me if that's not better than any Albany pizza." And we just picked some random pizza place, and after like 2 or 3 bites, you're looking at me saying, "You're right, Dad."
Wow. And then you proved them wrong, huh?
Well, I mean, you can't get a good slice of Sicilian around here.
Absolutely not.
You know, they think a square pizza is Sicilian. It's not Sicilian.
No, it is different. Yeah.
I mean, and they're good bagel places. You know, Pearl's over off of Whitehall Road. They have really good bagels. I mean,
okay.
Bagels have picked up around here. But the pizza, you know, there's been pizza places that have opened up where they came from New York and they brought all the dough with them for the first few weeks. And it's Long Island pizza, New York pizza the first couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden it's Albany pizza.
Makes sense. Now, one pizza place I got to plug, Romo's Pizza in Glenmont, New York.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Consistently good. And you know, like here in Albany, I feel like you don't get that. Like
Gusto's had good pizza out of Del Mar. They're not bad.
Okay, they're still open, or
yeah.
Oh, good to know.
I just got one a couple days ago.
And Serrano's. It's not my favorite type of pizza, but
Yeah,
it's cool to see.
Yeah, people love Serrano's. Yeah.
It's been around forever, and my family back in the day, I was almost too young to remember, but I do kind of remember being in the parlor with Satone's Pizza. Shout out Paul Satone, and rest in peace to his father. But that pizza, my dad to this day still raves about that.
I mean, you know, there's pizza around here that's not bad. I mean, I'll eat it. I mean, I don't dislike it.
Yeah.
There's just something not the same.
100%. And then we're just going to go through some of the questions. My mom, Tina Kikell, I can't call you Tina Kikell. Mom, she, Marino's Pizza, Marino's Fine Pizza in Schenectady, New York. Also a good doughy type of pizza. Let's see who else we got in the chat here. We got some newcomers here. Let's see. My mom still wants to meet you.
Oh, yeah, I met your mother.
I feel like you've met my mom.
I met her at the premiere, I think.
Let's see what else we got here. This episode rules. Marilyn Bell, Life in Beth, Resident Allen. What does that refer to?
What's that?
Marilyn says Life in Beth.
Oh, it's a TV show we watch.
Okay.
I think it's the one with Amy Schumer.
Oh, really? No way. Okay.
It's an excellent show. Yeah, it's really funny.
Definitely have to check it out. So yeah, I guess we are kind of wrapping up towards the end of the podcast. And before we get into your big announcement, just want to go over just some announcements here. Mirth Films, got to give a huge shout out to all the contributors who helped make Mirth Films what it is. All the people working the festivals and have helped me out throughout the years. I couldn't have done this without you. And then also, this podcast will be happening weekly. There is going to be weeks where maybe this doesn't happen. I'm in a week in September. I'm going to be gone on vacation. Definitely not going to be able to do an episode. But expect consistency. That's what we're going to be working on the end of 2024 here. People and Places, that's going to be happening once a month. Reuben Raiders, twice a month, maybe 3. Thank you all for tuning into that. And then obviously we got the ADK Music Festival and Eastbound Throwdown interviews that are going to be leaking until the festival happens. So definitely stay tuned to our website, mirth-films.com. Best way to support Mirth Films is by subscribing to our YouTube channel. And But here we go, everybody. Just going to go through here the last couple of questions. If you have any, get them in now because we're going to be ending the podcast anytime. But, Greg, what's going on?
Okay, so most people know that I was a teacher at one point. So I sort of count my year, not from January to December, but from September to the end of August. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make an announcement that I've been considering for many, many long months. And in 2025, in September, at the Eastbound Throwdown 10, that will be the last Guthrie Bell show that I will put on.
Wow.
Now, I'm not retiring completely. I will be available for consultation. If somebody wants to pay me to help with shows, I will do that. But Guthrie Bell Productions will no longer be putting up my money to do shows. I'm going to be doing tons of shows up until that point. I got a bunch of good stuff coming up in the following year. I'm giving you a year's notice. So if somebody need to get off your ass and start working hard to keep the music scene going, I will be around to help, but I'm just getting old and I'm tired. I want to spend time with my friends and family more, and it's been a long run. I want to go out while I'm still sort of on top instead of being pushed out at some point. And so at the beginning of September 2025, I'm closing down Guthrie Bell Productions. Like I said, I'm not going to be done with everything, but I will just not be working for myself anymore. If somebody wants to hire me and pay me, I'm not adverse to that. So that's what I want to let people know.
Wow. Well,
Greg, you heard it here first.
Yo, nobody anything, Greg. I mean, you've done so much for this music area, music scene. You've done so much for the bands, so much for the people, bringing people together, and 33, 34 years.
It'll be almost 33 years at that point.
Okay. I mean, just to say, three decades plus. I mean, this is
not an easy decision, and I know that when I'm going to leave here today, I'm going to regret it. But if I don't say it, it's not going to happen. So I just want to get it out there because I've been threatening retirement for a while. People are starting to think I'm full of shit, but I think this time I'm going to go for it. So I'm not going to miss you people because I'm not going to stop seeing everybody. I'm not going to stop being at shows, but I'm just going to stop losing money for a while.
Makes sense. Well, Greg, I just got to give you a handshake. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything.
Well, thank you, Frankie.
I don't know. I don't think people really appreciate what they have until it's gone.
No, I mean, I feel very appreciated. I feel very loved by people, and I don't want to think when people think I'm letting them down, but it's just I'm not getting any younger. I'm 71 years old. And, it's getting harder and harder to stay out all night and party with you people. So at some point I got to take a break. And I think one more year of this should be enough.
Well, you know what they say, 70's the new 40.
Yeah, not with my body.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on to the first.
Thanks for having me, Frankie.
Of course. Yes, as you heard, Greg, go to all and every single Guthrie Bell production shows. Not only are you supporting local and live music, but you're supporting 30 plus years of promotion. You're supporting the venues, you're supporting the bands, you're supporting the staff. There's a lot that goes into it that you don't realize, and seriously, I like consistency with what you've done has laid the groundwork for other people to do what they're doing today.
Well, there's plenty of people out there that can do what I'm doing, so maybe not as well, but they can try.
Yeah, they're just not as good looking. So here we go, episode 62. Thank you all for tuning in. Kinda Live, Kinda Livin' podcast. As always, subscribe to Mirth Films on our YouTube channel. Head to Mirth-Films for all things live music, entertainment, original video content, podcasts, and much more. And we will see you on the next one. Every Tuesday, 6:30. Don't forget to tune in. Love you guys, and have a great night.